You've seen me selecting objects on pages throughout all the earlier movies, but let's take a moment to really look at the details of selecting objects because there are some subtle and sometimes confusing aspects to this seemingly simple task. The basic tools to select objects on our page, as you know, are the Selection tool, the black arrow tool, and the white arrow Direct Selection tool. We can do almost everything we need with the black arrow Selection tool, so let's start there. You know that you can select objects, and you know you can select more than one object at a time by shift-clicking. You can also select objects by dragging over an area. I'll click out here on the pasteboard to deselect all of that. I'll just drag over this area here, and you'll see that anything that this marquee touches is selected. In some cases, objects get a solid selection line with corner handles. In other cases, you'll see dashed lines. The dashed lines means that these are groups, and I'll be covering groups in a later chapter. I can select everything on my spread, no matter how many pages are on that spread, everything by pressing Command-A or Control-A on Windows. That selects all the objects on this spread. You'll notice that some of these objects are colored red and some are colored blue. Those colors reflect what layer they're on, and layers too is a subject I'll be covering in a later chapter. If you want to deselect everything on your page, press Command-Shift-A or Control-Shift-A. That's one that you should definitely get into your hands. Just do that a few times and get used to it. That's a really handy one, the ability to deselect everything on your spread with one keyboard shortcut. Now here's something that confuses a lot of InDesign users. If I click on this graphic, it's selected, right? But what if I was really trying to select what's behind that logo, a different image? Well, you can select through one object to an object behind it by holding down the Command key on the Mac or Control key on Windows, and then clicking. I Command or Control clicked once, and it selected through that object to the next object down. I'll hold down Command or Control and click again, and I'll select even behind that to this image in the very back. Command or Control click again, and it goes all the way back to the top because there's no more objects behind that one. I've mentioned in earlier movies the ability to double-click to go inside an object. For example, if I click once on this graphic, it selects the frame. If I double-click on it, it selects the image inside the frame. Double-click again, and it goes back to selecting the frame. Same thing with text. If I double-click on this text frame, it goes inside the frame by switching to the Type tool and going inside and placing the cursor right where I double-clicked. In this case, I can't double-click again because it'll just select a word. So to get out to select the frame again, I hit the Escape key. Double-clicking also works for groups. If I click over here in this black area, I see that I have selected a group. I'm not sure how many objects there are in that group, but I know that I can go inside it by double-clicking. Double-click once, and I select the object inside the group. Double-click again, and I go back and select the entire group. Sometimes you can change objects on your page even without selecting them. For example, with the Selection tool, I'll roll over this image and then start dragging. Note that that changed the image. It actually moved the image inside the frame even without selecting the image or its frame. That's because I accidentally clicked and dragged on top of the Content Grabber. The Content Grabber is that bagel-looking or lifesaver-looking thing in the middle of graphic frames. If you click and drag over that Content Grabber, it will move the image even without selecting it. It's a cool feature, but I have to tell you, it drives me crazy because I'm accidentally moving images when I don't mean to. So I'm going to undo this with a Command-Z or Control-Z on Windows, and I'm going to go turn that Content Grabber off. I'll go to the View menu, choose Extras, and then choose Hide Content Grabber. Now when I move my selection tool over a graphic, I don't see that little bagel, and I can't accidentally move it. I can still move the image because, as I just mentioned, double-click chooses the image, and now I can move it around inside the frame. Double-click again, and I go back to choose the frame. Now the other selection tool that you need to know about is the Direct Selection tool, the white arrow tool. The white arrow Direct Selection tool lets you select inside objects in a different way. In this case, I can choose a single point on a path. You see what happens when I hover over this frame? All of the points on the path highlight. Now I can click and drag, and I'm moving just that single point on that frame. I can also move segments, that is the lines between points. If I move my cursor on top of a segment, this line between the points, the cursor actually changes to indicate that if I click and drag, it'll move that segment. Well, now that you've got the hang of selecting objects in your documents, let's explore how to format those objects, starting with how to assign a fill or a stroke color.